On that note, we also really want to appreciate the fact of everyone coming out this evening. We definitely see it as a vote of confidence and an interest in partnership in how to help keep our children safe. Because the idea of bullying is not limited to school. It's not limited to any specific venue or environment, but it's something which is pervasive throughout. And unless the students learn the tools, the strategies, how to help each other, how to help themselves, it opens up too many opportunities and the possibility for them to be victimized. So this is an evening that we can have the opportunity to really hear from an expert, Dr. Blumenthal, and in a moment I'm going to ask Dr. Michelle to formally introduce him. But it is a time for us to be empowered ourselves and to know what we can do as parents to help empower our children. So before any further ado, I really want to take a chance to really recognize some people who are here this evening. First of all, I want to recognize our Executive Vice President. So, Mr. Shapiro, whichever you're going by today. Our Executive Director, Steve Karp. Very much a privilege that you are here. As well as esteemed political colleague, Rabbi Fleischer, and Rabbi Donat, who also works as a Rav in Fairlawn, as well as, what's the official title with OHEL? New Jersey Outreach Coordinator, who helped make this evening possible. Additionally, this is a program which is jointly sponsored, which is nice to be able to say and hear, by all three divisions of our school. It's the JEC Lower School, it's the RTMA Middle School, and I want to recognize Rabbi Yablonsky here as well as the Bruriah Junior High. So at this point, without any further ado, Dr. Michelle.
Hello. It's really nice to see so many people come out. I know it's not hard to get out of your house and not be in your pajamas so late at night, so thank you for coming. This is sort of a second part in a series of things we're doing to try to make sure that our school stays a bully-free zone. This morning, you might have saw in an email, we had a program for the children, 1 hour for grades for kindergarten through primer, through first, a second, and third through sixth. And it was a fabulous program. I encourage you to talk to your children about it and hear what they learned. Now, we have Dr. Blumenthal. We're very excited to have him tonight to present to you. And we will be continuing to work together with you, with the students, to increase awareness and continue the discussion over the course of the whole year. So without taking too much time, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Blumenthal here tonight. Dr. Blumenthal is the Zachter Family Chair in Trauma and Crisis Counseling at OHEL and the Director of the OHEL Miriam Center for Trauma, Bereavement, and Crisis Response. In addition, Dr. Blumenthal is Director of Group Psychotherapy Training for Psychiatry Residents and Psychology Interns at North Shore, Long Island Jewish Health System, and Educational Director of the Counseling Training Program for Prospective Clergy at Yeshiva University. Clearly a very, very busy man who made time to come out tonight. He's also a consultant to the TOVA Mentoring Program on Long Island and founder and chairman of the Board of Education of CAHAL, a partnership of schools providing special education services. Dr. Blumenthal also maintains a private practice for children, adolescents, and adults in Cedarhurst, New York. We're very, very, very excited to have you here. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I'll thank my mother for writing that introduction. Okay, no, it's really great to be here, and I have to tell you, I am really impressed with the turnout, because a weekday night typically is not such a great turnout. First of all, by the gender distribution, we see who the real bullies are, right? No, but it really, a little bit of personal stuff, but it really is impressive, and I think it really shows a genuine concern and willingness. I know what it's like on a weekday night for parents to get away. Take away some time and to talk about the well-being of our children and a very important and timely subject. I'm going to present, and if it was a smaller crowd, I might say maybe we can have some questions in the middle. I think maybe what we'll do is let me complete my presentation. Won't be too long. We'll have some time then for some give and take. Just be gentle. I'm very sensitive and I don't like being victimized. And anyway, Dr. Michelle told me if I don't come, she's not going to talk to me at the next Nefesh conference. You know, So I really, we'll have some time, hopefully, for some give and take, because I think I want to make sure I'm addressing everybody's needs and interests. So what we're going to cover is, I'm going to define bullying. Now, that's not because I want to be so scientific, but what's happened is there's so much concern about bullying that it's sort of getting overgeneralized. Like everything now, every painful interpersonal experience is being portrayed as bullying. Bullying is different than many other experiences. So we're going to really sort of like pinpoint what bullying is, and then we're going to talk about also one of the key issues, which is why it's so underreported. As we're going to see, it's very rare that children will tell us about bullying. We'll talk about bullying at different ages. And then, of course, most importantly, what you can do as parents, and what we can do from a communal perspective. Because one of the things, and I'll get back to that later, is that nobody is more effective in bullying prevention than the peer group. And no matter how hard we try, no matter how well intended we are, it's the peer group that really makes a difference. So, and by the way, it's important now. That's another thing we're going to talk about is why it's changed so much. Because this is probably the most common question I and everybody else gets asked, which is, we've all been bullied. You know, I always like to tell the story about, maybe I'm aging myself a bit, but I used to take, for almost about 8 years, I went to MTA and NYU, I used to take that treacherous walk on the 184th Street subway station, right? You remember that? To YU. And early in my career, I was involved in a program which was a court referral program where some kids who got in legal trouble, if the judge, it was a first-time offense, and judge thought maybe therapy would help, he'd refer them to this program. And sometimes when I'd meet the parents, you know, they looked vaguely familiar. And I'd say, didn't we once meet on Audubon Avenue on 184th Street? You were with 3 of your cousins, you know, with chains and baseball bats, and I was there with a barely used Baba Metzia, you don't remember, you know. But it was part of growing up. And it's not that way anymore. It's not considered rites of passage. I want to talk about why that's changed. Okay, so let's start first with defining. And I have the CDC, the government's definition, which is that bullying is any unwanted aggressive behavior or behaviors by another youth or group of youths who are not siblings or current dating partners. Only reason being is that has a different title. Involving an observed or perceived power imbalance, very important word, the power imbalance, and repeated multiple times. Those are the two key points to bullying. Bullying is when there's a power imbalance and when it's repetitive. Bullying may inflict harm or distress on the target youth, including physical, psychological, social, and educational harm, and the research is fairly overwhelming that people who are targeted and bullied, the effects are lasting. I mean, not one time, not a handful of times, but they do have lasting effect. And I can tell you personally, I've had 50-year-olds in my office talk about bullying that happened 30 years ago, something like that, and they'll talk about it like it happened yesterday. Now, depends who you read, there are either 3 or 4 types of bullying, and just go through that very quickly. There's verbal bullying, which is saying or writing something, so teasing, name-calling, inappropriate sexual comments, taunting, threatening to cause harm. There's social bullying, that, by the way, probably is far more prevalent in our community than the other types. We're not, by nature, very violent people. So there will be fights, but we tend not to have the same degree of violence, but the social ostracism in a cohesive community, in a community where connections and relationships are so important, is much more painful. It's much more prevailing. So social bullying, sometimes referred to as relational bullying, involves hurting someone's reputation or relationship, leaving someone out on purpose, telling other children not to be friends with someone, spreading rumors about someone, embarrassing someone in public. And then, of course, there's the physical bullying, which includes hitting, kicking, pinching, spitting, tripping, pushing, taking or breaking someone's things, making mean or rude gestures, or not giving somebody shishi on Shabbos. No. And then some people list cyberbullying as sort of a fourth. Some people say it's the same, it's not, but we'll get to cyberbullying in a second. So just some statistics as of 2015. So in other words, surveys that just came out. 20% of high school students report being bullied on school properties in the 12 months preceding the survey. Okay, most report name-calling as the most prevalent type of bullying, followed by teasing, rumor spreading, physical incidents, purposeful isolation, threats, belongings being stolen, and sexual harassment. And surprisingly, cyberbullying is considered the least frequent, although probably the most consequential. Some of those very scary news items that I'm sure you've all seen, of children, who suicide as a result of bullying, that's usually cyberbullying. By the way, that is very rare. It makes a lot of headlines. In one case, is one too many. But again, if your child has been victimized, I don't want you to be that alarmed. It is still rare, but still, it does speak to the pain, and that those are very often situations. Cyberbullying, although, as I said, I think in our community we're going to have much more of that kind of social ostracism. That'll be the type that we'll see. Here, only 16% of high school students report in 2015 that they were bullied electronically. 70.6% of teens have seen bullying occurring in their school, and approximately 30% of young people admit to bullying themselves. So it shows you the prevalence. And by the way, as Bruriah mentioned, the bullying is not limited to just school and to children. There are instances of teachers bullying students, and also there's office place. There's bullying in the office that can take place, and that's reported we're becoming increasingly aware of it. So it is a phenomena that can last into adulthood as well. Now, as I said, it's rarely reported. It's believed, the statistics seem to show that only 20 to 30% of instances of bullying are reported to adults. And as we're going to hopefully clarify, this needs to change, that this needs to be something that we become aware of. Again, I'm not a big believer, nobody is, in tampering in the children's world. But again, if something is so out of control and destructive, then we have to get involved. So only, as I said, right now, only 20 to 30% reported. And by the way, the more vulnerable the victim or victims, the less likely they're going to be reported. So in the literature, they'll talk about immigrants, they'll talk about LGBT kids who are afraid to report the bullying. Of course, there was that very notorious case here in Jersey, in Rutgers, where again, that was a case of LGBT and they were not reported. But again, in our community, more likely the kind of more vulnerable kids will be the kids perhaps with learning disabilities, perhaps with physical ailments, or maybe even the kids, I hate to say it, but it's a reality, the kids from, relatively speaking, poorer homes, the scholarship children who somehow sense that they're not as important or revered, or that something, even if it's hidden, they may feel or sense that their stay in the school is a charity, and that may make them more hesitant, or the family more hesitant. I know that, for example, one thing I hear in a lot of the work I do with divorced couples, that kids from divorced homes and even single parents from divorced homes are very often hesitant to report any kind of concern to the school because they feel it will immediately be chalked up to their status as divorcees. So the more vulnerable population, and of course, those are often the ones who are victimized, are going to be far less hesitant to report it. Now, why is it reported so infrequently? So for one thing is, it usually does not occur within the purview of the adults. Most bullying takes place in my experience, the locker room. I mean, that's the place where a lot takes place. But bathroom, locker room, lunch, recess, school bus, but this is not in the literature, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's the school bus ride home. In the morning, the kids are comatose. If they're like, they haven't quite woken up yet and they're crying. By the time they come home, they've had a whole day of school pent up inside of them and they're ready to kill anyone. So that school, even till today, sometimes if I happen to pass a school bus, especially a yeshiva school bus around 4 o'clock, my images of the Wild West don't compare to what that bus looks like. But that'll be very often a place where, so it's not within the view of adults. That's one of the reasons why it's not reported. The other thing is that, this is a very important point, sometimes kids don't realize they're being bullied. Something is repetitive and goes on and on and on. In Gemara language, we call nasa keheter. It becomes normal, and you're not even realizing. I will tell you that even as an adult, I was once in a work setting, the only one time, fortunate, and it wasn't so long, but I was in a setting where the employees were being bullied, myself and a lot of the other employees as well, and it was only after I left that I realized it. And when I read the literature, that's what it was. But when you're in it, in a way, that's very adaptive. You make it less bad, so it doesn't bother you as much. So sometimes kids aren't even aware that they're being bullied. It's dangerous. The bully is not going to think very kindly of you if you're going to report him or her or that group, because as we'll see, in some ages it's more group bullying, in other ages it's more individual. They're not going to like you too much. And therefore the child may be more hesitant to report it because they don't want to get into trouble, and you don't want to look like a tattletale. You don't want to look like a rat. It's looked down upon. You're seen as weak or as vulnerable. So therefore they'll also be more hesitant to report it because they don't want it because of the shame involved. And then another thing which is very common, and again, is that when something terrible happens, sometimes we blame ourselves. And so therefore the kid who is being rejected and ostracized may self-blame. So sometimes as parents, we have to discern. We have to pull it out, and we have to look. We know our children, and I know parents, particularly mothers, really know their children at a sort of gut level. And if your sense is that the child is not themselves, there could be a host of reasons. But if your sense is that something's not right, and we'll talk about how to do that, it may be your job to find out and even to clarify it for the child if this is or this is not bullying. And then, by the way, the other thing, which many children report is, and it's again not unfounded, even if they report it, they're worried about whether the adults will be able to take care of it. First of all, not all adults in school settings or whatever are that competent or know how to handle these kind of situations. But even putting that aside, let's say they are as competent as anybody could imagine. Of course, that's outside of Elizabeth. Let's say it's Elizabeth, where everybody is highly competent. It's the child's world. And when you're trying to remedy or fix something that's social, it's much harder because you're going into their world. It's a little bit like America going into Iraq or Vietnam and trying to, fix things when they're in a foreign territory. It's much more difficult. So sometimes it's just not reported because the child's not confident. So then they may have the worst of all situations. They're a tattletale. Now they're in bigger trouble with the bully, and the adult is somewhat incompetent in terms of handling it. Now, why is it worse today? Why has it gotten so bad? Again, bullying was always considered a rites of passage. We all went through it. We all, the school bullying. I remember once I had to go to a school because of a tragedy. I won't say what, but it was, it was a modern school, and I was in there. It was a very serious tragedy, and I was there with the whole team and staff. And finally, at one point, the principal comes to me and says, "Oh, Dr. Blumenthal, the school bully wants to see you." Now, when I was in high school and the school bully wanted to see me, it wasn't one of my better days. It was, and then the assistant principal goes to the school bully wants to see you, and turned out he came in, he was crying, and he was a mess. But it's part of our life. We all grew up with that. So why is it today? We didn't. And in fact, the rule of thumb would have been, if I were giving this talk 20 years ago, I would have said, it's a child's world. Let him work it out. Teach them how to handle these situations. Don't meddle, because they have to deal, as Bruriah said, they have to deal with this in life. So let them figure it out. It'll hurt, it'll be tough, like most things we do, especially in the social arena. We're not hopefully not micromanaging our children in the social arena, so why should we do it here? But today it is much worse. Now, there are basically two reasons why bullying has gotten so out of control. Two with subsets. One is the internet. Used to be that bullying took place in school. It was a rough day. You came home, you could sort of wipe your brow and you could collect yourself. Maybe you could talk to your big brother or big sister. You could talk to your parents. You could call some friends maybe and get a handle, know what's going on, but it ended. Today, with the internet, it gets even worse when you come home. And not only does it get worse, but the internet is the bully's dream come true, because they can hide behind the screen, nobody knows, and they can reach everybody, spreading rumors, suggesting different types of activities. And by the way, one of the major culprits, which we're going to get to again probably later, is Instagram and Snapchat. If you're being ostracized, if you're being excluded, not enough that you're being excluded, but now everybody gets the picture, everybody sees that everybody was invited, and you're not. So that has seen as a reason why it's taken, as I said, some of the more severe cases very often do involve the internet and social media. The other reason, by the way, why the internet has made it difficult is that, and this is again something maybe hard for some of us to relate to, but social belonging. I mean, the whole area of children's way of socializing has changed radically because of social media. When I present on that subject, I always, when I'm presenting to professionals, I have PowerPoints, and as some of you might have heard, I use cartoons, and one of the cartoons shows parents visiting their son, freshman day, it says, in college, and obviously they just asked him if he has any friends, and he said, "I'm so busy being friended, I don't have any friends." But we have this kind of superficial type of being friended. And it's really it's changed in terms of privacy. The whole concept of privacy has gone through radical changes because of, now we share everything. But, and there's all sorts of repercussions to this, but the other thing is social belonging now, being friended, being part of this group, being part of the chat, has become so important because it's now reverberating, it's not just during recess and not just maybe on who you sit next to on the bus. It goes on and on all day. So the internet has really made, especially the social ostracism part, much more severe. And then there's another reason, which is my own way of thinking about it, but it's, I have to say that it's my own theory, but I think it's true. I think we're weaker. I don't think we're just more vulnerable people. I don't think there's anything terrible about that. Our lives have gotten easier. Our lives have gotten less complicated in some respects. And we're more sensitive and more vulnerable. And I don't think there's anything we have to apologize about that. That it might have been that when we were younger, we were more resilient, and our children are more, I know, I traveled, as I just mentioned, an hour and a half by subway to school and had to walk through bad neighborhoods, and my kids got handheld and driven to schools right in their neighborhoods, and I'm thrilled about that. And every time I would take my kids, just a mile or two away from home and right in that neighborhood to a school with beautiful grounds and everything like that, I would think back and I'd say how wonderful it is, and I would say, especially Mo did. But it's but as a result of it, maybe we are less tough. And I think that's part of it. I think we're more sensitive. I think we're more rejection sensitive. And it doesn't matter. That's what it is. And today, as I said, bullying has much more severe consequences. And it is the kind of thing that we as adults have to get involved. By the way, there's another type of bullying, which is now getting some attention in literature, and I find this fascinating. I'm not sure. It's sort of like a semi-bullying. But it's what they call frenemies. Anybody familiar with this concept? Yeah, some nodding. There's a fancy term for it. By strategic controllers. You have to say psychologists like to come up with fancy names because it makes it sound very scientific. But these are people that will befriend someone but use their friendship in a very manipulative kind of way. Today you're my friend, today you're not my friend. Usually very cunning, socially adept people who prey on someone who's more desperate for that friendship. And they do a little bit, I don't know if anybody who has ever fishing like I do, but when you catch a big fish, you have to tire them out. So you let them out, and then you pull them in, you let them out, and you pull them in. That's sort of like what they do. Now, it is a form of sort of torturing a kid. It's not like bullying because it's that inconsistency of friendship and letting go. But it is something that's getting a lot of attention. Maybe it's one of the new phenomena that are happening and are disruptive to our children. And need our assistance. But it is, again, as I said, it is much more complicated. Now, here's a very important point. So what has happened is, because bullying has gotten so much attention, people are it's becoming over-inclusive. I just the other day had a 14-year-old boy in the office. His mother came in and said he's bullying someone. What happened in the middle of a ball game? He called the other kid gay. First of all, today that's a compliment, but it's not a nice thing to do. Maybe it's not nice to call somebody names. It's not bullying. Okay, again, bullying is repetitive. Bullying is when there's a power imbalance. If he was much bigger than the kid or whatever, he had that advantageous position. But there's a difference between bullying and a fight. Fights aren't nice. We don't like it, and sometimes the adults and sometimes the school has to get involved if there's an altercation or disagreement or a serious fight. It could be. But fighting is not bullying. If a child got into a fight, even if the child got the worst of the fight, it was a physical altercation or verbal, whatever, that's not bullying. And schools are getting phone calls. My son was bullied. It's not bullying. It's a fight. And that's different. And again, we have to be clear what we're talking about. One time being picked on, one time maybe being ridiculed by someone more powerful or by a collection of people, because that's part of the power imbalance. Sometimes, very often, the power imbalance is a lot of people against one or two or something like that. One time it happening is not bullying. That happens. It hurts, it's upsetting, they need some extra hugs when they come home, and lick their wounds. We'll talk about some other things you can do, but that's not what bullying is. Repeated, bullying is strategizing, and bullying is with the deliberate purpose of hurting someone. And again, where there is this power imbalance. Okay. Also, and here's a very important point, and again, this bears much more in our community. Not all exclusion, not all rejection is bullying. There is, first of all, it happens sometimes that you get excluded. We all know, those of us who are adults, we know we don't always get that promotion at work or that raise that we thought we had coming. And we might be right. Maybe we were supposed to get it, and for some reason we didn't. But there is sometimes exclusion, or sometimes, at the shul dinner, we don't get seated with the people we want to get seated, whatever it might be. There's sometimes that's not necessarily bullying. That's part of life. Or for that matter, apropos to the major competition to today's presentation, not everybody makes every sports team. Now, and then, by the way, sometimes it's legitimate. You don't get into every college you apply to. You don't get every job you want. We don't always get included. And today, because again of all the attention that bullying is getting, every type of exclusion suddenly becomes bullying. And not only is not every exclusion not bullying, but to experience some exclusion, to have that experience occasionally, where, especially if it's legitimate, where you don't make it for whatever reason, is healthy, is a life lesson. As Rabbi mentioned, that happens in life. And many of these things, best of it happens when you're children, and you deal with it, then instead of, when you're adulthood, if for the first time you have to deal with it. One of my very close friends, when I was growing up, wanted to get on the BTA basketball team for whatever reason. You guys aren't going BTAs, but... and he didn't make it. They said he didn't make it because he didn't know how to dribble. He went dribbling crazy. I remember he'd sit at his desk and he would be dribbling a basketball while he's studying. He dribbled all day. The next day he got into the team. That's a very positive experience. That's again, you're excluded and you learn from it and you grew from it. That's not bullying, okay? Purposeful, deliberate exclusion, people ganging up, people sort of putting it in your face that you're being excluded, that's bullying. But we have to be very clear. By the way, it's very important also in terms of helping our children, that when they come home complaining about, especially some sort of exclusion or some unpleasant personal experience, that we discern for them what this experience was and whether it warrants our getting involved and our getting involved in it. Let's give you some examples. Just show that there are, in the normal course of interaction with children, there is a lot of aggression. Kind of study as well. The average that's right. They divided children up into aggressive children and non-aggressive children. This was in very young grades. This was like first or third grade. And the average aggressive children did some form of mean behavior every 2 minutes. But those carefully selected non-aggressive children average mean behavior every 3 minutes. So the difference between the mean children and the non-mean children is 1 minute. But if you watch children, and this is what they call naturalistic observation, which is a big way in which we understand. So if you watch children in the playground, a lot of mean stuff going on, a lot of aggressive stuff going on. That's part of growing up, and that's not necessarily bullying. By the way, an observational study of 3rd through 6th graders found cringe-worthy list of 32 different ways that children reject each other. But you can imagine, they don't have 32 different ways of doing mathematics or spelling, but they have 32 different ways in which they can. So, aggressive play, fighting, nasty remarks, this is part of being a child, and it prepares them for shul Shabbos. That's life. Okay. Now, by the way, one more thing also. Some of you may be, actually probably the parents of the bullies aren't here, but there may be those who didn't come are probably sitting up, my kid's the bully. I don't have to worry. No picnic to be the bully. And it's not necessarily, first of all, the bullies, there's a lot of tension. They have to preserve, anytime you have to preserve something, that, as we say in Talmudic speech, and there's no meat behind it, there's no depth, there's no reality behind it. It's a constant tension, and they cannot necessarily be themselves, and they can't necessarily focus on studies or other important matters because they're very busy preserving their status as the alpha dog or whatever, however you want to call it. So it's not. And by the way, again, even the studies show that people who are repeatedly bullied, there are lasting effects usually in terms of sensitivity, depression, possibly suicidal thoughts, anxiety, etc. the research on the bullies are that they don't come out smelling like a rose either. Many of the bullies will later become substance abusers and engage in criminal activities as well. So we want to be neither the bully nor the victim, neither position. And if your sense is that your child is involved, besides the fact that it's just bad ethos and we want to remedy and correct it, it's not good for the child either to be the bully or to be bullied. All right. Okay. Now, let me just talk very quickly why bullying occurs and how bullying differs at different ages. Okay. By the way, the age group where the most bullying takes place, child probably shouldn't come as a surprise, in middle school. In my experience, I would say probably 6th to 7th graders. By 8th grade, they've got about 1.5 feet out the door, they're already calming down. But 6th and 7th grade is the most intense. Now, it's a very different type of bullying. In younger grades, you have the bullying is much more likely to be one-on-one or a whole class against one child or one or two children. The elementary school age years are years of uniformity. The children want to be the same. They don't like difference. And if somebody is in some way different, that they find it very threatening. So you'll have much more of that kind of, you'll always have the big tough kid picking maybe on the smaller kid, but you'll have much more of the collective class singling out one child or some small cluster of children. It might be the Ashkenazi kids picking on the Sephardi kids picking on the Ashkenazi kids, whatever. It might be just somehow some small cluster of children who don't sort of fit into that neat little package that they want them to be. In middle school, something very interesting happens is you have what we call technically in psychology the development of subgroups, more often referred to as cliques, gangs, etc. And the bullying will occur within the context of those subgroups, and it tends also then to be much more sort of social, so whether you belong or you don't belong. Reason for that, by the way, is just very quickly, I don't want to make this too psychological, but the developmental task of adolescence is what we call separation individuation. It's breaking away from the family and really, in a way, shifting so much of the affection and attention that used to be geared towards parents towards the peer group. I don't know if any of you have had the experience. I know I've certainly had the experience. I don't have my daughter's friends here, so I can be careful, but I was once, I teach the YU speaker students, and I was once lecturing them, and I just, in passing, mentioned, I have a 23-year-old son, blah, 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 and one of the guys in class happened to be Google chatting at that moment with that 23-year-old son, and he writes to me, your father's telling a story about you. I said, which one? And as soon as the class is over, my cell phone rings, and I said, why are you telling stories about me? And I'm like looking at the walls. I'm sure you've had the experience, right? Your kid adores you, they think the world of you, etc., and then you come up, they're about 12 or so, and they're at sleepaway camp, and you come to camp to visit them, and they have like this 16-year-old counselor who's the coolest thing in the world. Like everything this counselor does is great. Now you were that 16-year-old's bris, but that doesn't matter. So the affection for the parents goes elsewhere, and one of the places it goes is to the peer group. And ultimately, it's the Alkenia Zovish that we just read in Bereshit, that you leave the family and you pick a member of that peer group to be the closest person you'll ever have. But the process in middle school is sort of not here or there. So what happens is the kids in this age, they make it's like peer families. So it's like a hybrid of what they're leaving and what they're going to. So having cliques and having gangs is a very normal part of those years. And if it's not out of hand, it's perfectly okay, it doesn't have to be disrupted. But very often, it has that quality of who's included, who's excluded. And so you can have much more of that sort of social ostracism, or as I described, cluster of kids going out, or after school, going out to the pizza shop, whatever, and then Instagram pictures, and the one kid left out. And it's deliberate. It's almost like they're posting the picture so that kid should see that he or she is left out. That's the bullying, and that's the form that it'll take during those years. Okay, so what's the solution? Okay, So first of all, from a school perspective, as I said, what the goal is, and I know it's the goal here, and it's more increasingly the goal in all schools, is to really create an atmosphere of zero tolerance for bullying. And the best thing that can happen is if you can educate, and you participate as parents, to make the bystanders the ones who are preventing bullying. By the way, research also shows that people who are not participating in bullying, but are the bystanders, are watching it happen, have also an adverse reaction, have more anxiety, more depression. It's stressful to be a bystander, to be watching it even from the side. So when you have a school-wide bully prevention, or you have a class-wide, or you have a community-wide effort to minimize bullying, you're not only helping the bully, you're not only helping the victim, you're helping the Erev Rav, also helping the ones who are watching it as well. But the bystanders are very often the most effective ones who can intervene. The research shows again and again, I think I have a study here, yeah, bullying stops within 10 seconds, 57% of the time when a classmate, when a peer intervenes. So the most effective when bullying goes on is when the peer gets involved. In fact, I will tell you, in previous periods of my life, when I was one time a psychologist in school, it was a co-ed school, and there was where the boys and girls were separated in the 5th grade, and the 7th grade in particular. I could have had a full-time job dealing with the cliques and all that. And again, this kind of bullying. And one of the things that I would do is I would help with the teacher identify, and then we'll play that, okay? I would tell the teacher, give me in each clique who's the leader, who's the followers, and who's the in-betweens. And who would I work with? In-betweens. Because the leaders are to invest in the clique. The followers don't have enough leverage, but in-betweens are the ones who have power, and yet they're not so invested. And it would be with them that I would work to try to minimize or interfere with the bullying or temper some of that kind of clique behavior that was going on. So it really is, that's our ultimate goal. In fact, when I was preparing, I was looking over some material, I came across a study, a UCLA study that just came out, that showed that in a school that most of the kids, if they're asked to identify the quote-unquote cool kids, they'll very often identify the bullies. So the mindset is that these kids are cool because they're bullying, and what we want to do is shift that mindset and say, no, you're a loser because you're bullying, and really make it clear that the cool kids are the kids who don't or who will engage in behaviors, and they are the most effective ones. So from a school perspective, that's why schools like JEC will have bully prevention programs, will educate our children to make it clear that we don't look what bullying is and how we don't approve of that. But also for you at home, you need to be, or even if your child is not either the bully or the victim, that part of your education is to make it clear that this kind of behavior, that's going to happen. It's going to definitely happen that your child will have friends that he or she likes better than others. I'm going to get into, I hope if I have time, I'll get into the issue of some of the more marginally, socially marginal kids. But, this is not something we approve of. It's nothing, again, it doesn't mean you have to be friends with everybody. But you don't have to flaunt the friendship. You don't have to purposely and deliberately exclude somebody and hurt somebody. And that if we can create that milieu, this will be healthier for everyone involved. Now, of course, the obvious question is, what do you do? What do you sense? How do you know? First of all, kids don't report it. How do you know if your child is being bullied, and how can you help? So there are distinct behavioral changes for children who are being bullied. Anytime you see a change, a lasting, not just one day, but a significant change in your child's general mood or behavior, academic performance, the child looks preoccupied, breaks into tears easier, more vicious and fighting with siblings than the normal fights. Child's not eating, not sleeping, academic work is deteriorating. These are red flags, and you should be concerned. It could be other reasons, but it could be that they're victims of bullying, or if they're very agitated, they're busy, and they're on the computer a lot and talk to people in very secretive kind of ways, and you see attention, they might actually be the bullies, which is also should be concerned to you. If they don't, first of all, it should be a topic of conversation. I don't want you to go home tonight, waking your kids up and giving them a speech about bullying. That's not what you should be doing. But as the expression goes, you wait for your pitch. If it comes up, and the topic comes up, it should be just like we talked about we talked about sexual abuse, we talked about other matters. This should be topic of conversation too. And if it comes up, and especially if it's natural, and it should be periodic. A one-time speech doesn't do anything. But intermittently to talk about this, that this is not our value system, this is not what we approve of. But also, again, if you're, so it should be the general milieu. But if your sense is that your child is being victimized and they're not sharing it, as often the case, if it's a younger child, if it's like a pre-adolescent, you can do the interrogation techniques. Okay, waterboarding is great, by the way. I recommend it highly for children, But no, seriously, you can, all right, buddy, what's going on? Children that age are much more inclined than when a parent asks them directly to share. Once they start hitting adolescence, they're not as willing to share with parents. And if it's your sense that something's going on, and sometimes then at that age, if you do the direct interrogation, you're going to shut them down even more. Then what you do is you create context for them to talk. Meaning, I'm going to, I have to go to the supermarket, I'd like some company, come along with me. Or just, Friday night, they're sitting on the couch reading, sit down next to them, so what's doing, and not, that kind of aggressive questioning, but create this atmosphere and milieu where they can share. Most of the kids feel much better when they share, even if they're hesitant. Okay. By the way, also, and I think this is a very important message, particularly to the teenage kids. When appropriate is not a sign of weakness if you tell. Yeah, if you come running and every time something doesn't go your way, you're running and complaining, or every time somebody says something unpleasant to you, you're running to your parents, that's not adaptive, and that should be discouraged. But if you are being victimized in this fashion, or in any other, or for that matter, if you're being pressured to compromising yourself in other areas of propriety, it's okay to tell. For that matter, we as adults do that as well. If there's something going on, if somebody is trying to break into your house, it's not a sign of strength if you're going to stand there and try to get rid of it. You call the police, you call for help. But it's human nature that when there are situations that are beyond our control, that we ask for help. Again, an inherent part of bullying is the power imbalance, and it's more than you can expect a child to handle, and we have to teach our children that. By the way, it comes up with other matters too. There's a certain behavior, any dangerous behavior, even though you swore up and down, you never tell on your friend, and you shouldn't. It's not a good thing to have teens sort of spy on each other. But if it's something dangerous, even if you promise, you report it. So we have to teach our children that there are times when it's perfectly appropriate, and it's not a sign of weakness that you turn to other people for help. Now, also, by the way, if your child, very often the kids who are picked on, or the child, more of the children who are rejected, this is a very difficult subject, are really lacking in social skills. Maybe that odd child, maybe that child without, who doesn't have that social acumen. I'm not talking about severe situations like autism or anything like that, but maybe just off socially. And so, first of all, then sometimes the exclusion is just they don't quite fit in. We have today very good social skills training techniques. There are people who specialize in social skills training. Don't neglect that. It's important as well. And if your sense is, and the earlier you get to it, the better. If your sense is that your child just doesn't have that social acumen naturally, it can be taught. It's harder, it becomes a little bit more unnatural, but it can be, or for that matter, if your child has what we call some of the dysregulatory situation, they have ADD. It's like a speaker who can't stand still and is constantly moving around as he talks. That's classic ADD. All right, and the ADD kid, because they're more impulsive, may not pick up on social cues, etc. Help your child if it's not severe. You can do it yourself, but there are people who are trained to do this, and there's nothing more important. By the way, one of the reasons, again, I should have said this earlier. Why is bullying so painful? Why can't the kid just say, "All right, so what? Big deal." But social belonging is so inherent, not only to our well-being, but to our safety. As we survive by hurting, or survive by belonging. And when we're made to feel that we don't belong, that's extremely painful. So it's a very important part of life, and children should be encouraged. We have to model it ourselves. Children are sponges, and they'll pick up on our behaviors. And if we're sitting at the Shabbos table, speaking Lashon Hara, or putting down people, or if we're frantically involved to make sure that we're included and others not included, or for that matter, if we place a disproportionate emphasis on grades, competition, sports for that matter, we have really, many of us have gotten very out of hand with athletic competition. I will tell you, and this is not easy for me to tell you this, but I heard this from one of the SMETA students that we also teaching at YU. He was himself a captain of his hockey team and makes some extra money while he goes to YU he refs games. And he was reffing a game in the Yeshiva League with a Gentile ref. And at one point that Gentile ref made a call that was very popular, and people were running in the stands and yelling at him and cursing at him. And when he walked away, he turned to the SMETA students and he said, "These are people who read the Bible. Sports is great, and competition is great, but we need to teach sportsmanship, and we have to make sure that winning isn't that important, because if we're going to emphasize that, then that's going to be emphasized by the kids as well." One of the hardest issues, and I really don't have a great solution for this, but one of the hardest issues is if your child really is just one of these children, as I mentioned earlier, who has a hard time socially, they're not socially adept, and are going to be excluded, not even necessarily because they're being bullied, but are excluded because they're not pleasant company. Or for that matter, your child is excluding someone else, not in that deliberate, purposeful kind of way because of bullying, but because maybe the child has a mental illness, maybe the child is odd or different. And is it realistic to ask your child, well, include this child in everything? It's not, that child may not be easy to have in their company. Or for that matter, maybe the kind of child you don't want to have in your house. It might be a very wild, out of control kid. And you don't want them, breaking your next favorite vase. So there are children who are a little bit of that square peg in the circle hole. And what can we tell our children about how to interact with those kind of children? So I don't have a perfect answer. It's a very painful, difficult subject. But I will tell you the following. First of all, there's never a reason to be cruel. There's no reason to be cruel. No matter how awful or whatever, cruelty should never be part of it. I can understand you don't always want to have them around. I understand you don't want to, when you're going on your midwinter ski trip, that's not the kid you want to bring along. But you cannot be cruel. And I think we also then have to say that if you have to exclude somebody, don't have to post it on Snapchat. You don't have to post pictures. You don't have to rub their nose in it. Then go and leave this child out, have your interaction. Try to keep it low-key. Don't go boasting about it, or if you're going to tell other people about it, be subtle about it. In other words, try to minimize the pain. If you feel, and this is a wonderful, if you will, meter, that you want to include this child, you want to make this child feel included, you can't ask your child to be the only one. Because again, very often these are kids who don't have many friends, and if somebody befriends them, they kind of latch on to them. Then it should be a collective undertaking. Then the whole group of children should take turns inviting this person over, or befriending, or somehow including this person. And it could be sort of a chesed kind of thing that's subtly orchestrated. You can't ask just one child to be different than everybody else, because sometimes, and now by the way, for this kid who's experiencing rejections, if he or she thinks, now I finally have a friend, and then that kid suddenly backs off, that's even worse. So it's a very difficult issue, and maybe one that you need to discuss between yourselves, or with Dr. Michelle, or with professionals, but there are ways to do it. But again, we can't expect that children. The solution to bullying is not to be over-inclusive and say, well, you have to always include everybody. Some people just don't fit. Okay, and then, again, in terms of our modeling, with this I'll conclude, we have to also, and I think this is a very important message for our community, as we've gotten bigger and more successful, we have become more exclusive. And we do have to train our children to be more open and receptive to different kind of people. And by the way, that includes those with emotional difficulties and some with mental illness. And I have to say that maybe I'm I'm a New Yorker, so Jersey is just this one big blur over the George Washington Bridge. But I will tell you that Bergen County, North Jersey, is probably in the film community doing more in terms of undoing the stigma of mental illness than any other part of our community, where there's some valiant efforts. In fact, it's going to be featured at the OHEL dinner. I think one family is going to be, who's had a tragedy as a result of mental illness, is going to be speaking openly about it. We have to face it, and we have to teach ourselves and our children to deal with some people whom social interactions don't work well. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories. It's a really beautiful story. It's an opportunity also maybe to talk about some of the great people in our community. It's a story actually about Moshe Feinstein's The story I heard actually was from a Rabbi Pear, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in Far Rockaway. And he said that he had a guy in his yeshiva who had a serious mental illness. He was a very odd, difficult, person with a serious mental illness. And one time he came to him and told him that he had a dream, and then Moshe Feinstein, the Baal Shem Tov, came to him, and Moshe Feinstein cursed him out. So right away, my parents said he got nervous. He said, who knows what this guy's going to do? So, getting a little hesitant, he said, what do you do? He said, so I went to Lower East Side, this was back a number of years when Moshe Feinstein was alive, to confront Moshe. So, he's thinking, here's the Gadol door, this Michigan is confronting him about a dream. He pictured the two biggest guys in Yeshiva probably going to come over and take the guy by the ears and throw him out in the street. Like, what are you doing? So he said, what happened? He said, well, Moshe listened to me. When I was done, he asked me for mechila, and they told me I must be very special because he himself never dreamt about the Baal Shem Tov, so I must be very special that I dreamt about the Baal Shem Tov. It's a beautiful example of being tolerant, of being respectful, and I think if we can promote that, we'll have a much better community and probably a lot less bullying. Okay, let me, no, please. Rather be bullied. Let me leave some time if people have questions. By the way, I can linger if people want to talk a little bit more about something more personal. I stay for a while, but maybe there's some more generic questions or something maybe that I didn't cover that you want me to discuss. Go ahead, please.
What are some of your suggestions? You have a community where everybody's friends, and all the kids are friends, and all these kids are going to continue to be friends with bullying. After all, whatever bullying is going on is over. They're going to progress as friends. What do you do to repair those relationships and keep parents and kids who are kind of involved in a bullying situation, to keep the parents friends and just not have everything collapse?
Okay, in other words, not let it spread to the parents. Right. Right. Right, they're going to why you they have to be friends, how they're going to survive it, right. Right. The again, it's really, it's a very good question, because if your child is being, I don't have to tell you as a mother, if your child's being victimized, you'd rather, one of the most beautiful, to me, one of the beautiful statements in Chumash is when Rivka says to Yaakov, let me get your curses. Any parent would rather they suffer than the child. So if your child is being victimized, your natural response, mine is something I want to say, but I'll get to a minute, but your natural response is to be very angry and want to protect your child and maybe to more aggressively pursue it, which will only make the bullying worse. That's never really an option. If your child is being victimized, sooner call, like Michelle called the school, let the school handle it. Don't try to take it. Don't try to settle it with the parent. If you feel you need to call the parent, by the way, what I would recommend is as follows. I'd say something like, you're my daughter and your daughter, or whatever, are having this conflict. I don't know whose fault it is. It could be just my daughter's fault. Would you like to try to see if we can get them to... In other words, don't point fingers, even though you know that her daughter is this witch, but never, no parents... I'm serious. I want to tell you something. In the 90s, my whole practice were, kids off the derech. That was the hot topic. I made a video and I wrote an article about it. So my whole practice were these rebellious teens. I used to get two types of parents, and I saw this again and again. I would get the parent who'd come in and tell me, kid's a bum. He's no good. He's a ganef. He's a mazik. And they were right. He was. 100% accurate. Right? Then I'd have the parent who comes in and says, deep down he's really good. Nobody would dug that deep, but he really didn't mean to hold up the restaurant, but his friends made him do it. You know which parents had more success with? The second ones, yeah. Because when you love someone, you can't see their faults. You shouldn't see their faults. So the other parent had already given up on the kid. So when your child's hurting, even if it's your child, you can't see it. So it's never great to take it up with the rest. Also, they will outgrow it. They will. And again, if we do some of these things. By the way, one more thing. You're going to find this very surprising. But if your child's been victimized, and let's say it's a passing thing. It's not one of those ongoing where you have to get more directly involved. But your child being mildly picked on, or there's some kid picking on them. One of the worst thing to do, by the way, is start lecturing them about everything they should do to stop it. And please don't have them bring the best candy into the school. I mean, you know that's not going to work because they'll eat the candy and then they'll beat them up. But sometimes it's good to get angry with your child at that person. What I mean is like this. What's the best? I don't tell you. What's the best solution if you're being if it's not this ongoing tense bullying? What's the best way to handle the bully? Ignore them. Right? Couldn't care less about you. But if you tell the child that, the child comes home, they were picked on, and they're feeling terrible. And you say, well, you should do this and you should do this now. Not only do they feel terrible because they're picked on school, now the parents are busy telling them everything they're doing wrong. But sometimes going to say, who's Rachel? What makes her think she's such a big shot? She's so gorgeous, she's so beautiful, what's so bad? Now, why am I doing that? Not because I like that, but two things happened then. First of all, the kid felt victimized. Now we're sort of like getting even a little bit. But also, I'm modeling what the child should do. I'm modeling for the child, which is, I don't care what you think. You're not that important. You don't matter that much. So that's another, again, not for the really intensive, repeated kind of bullying, which is more than the kid can handle, but for those kind of passing types of victimization. But no, don't. If you're angry and you feel the child being victimized by somebody else, and you're angry at that other parent, don't make the call. It'll only make it worse. Yeah, go ahead.
What if you have a situation where your child is experiencing something that is really to a level where the school is aware and is actively, they're really actively trying to do something, but, kids, you can't snap your fingers.
Right.
Change.
Great question.
What
Yeah.
message do you give your kid
Mm-hmm.
who's still
So I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you what I do. As always, I'm going to repeat the question that wasn't heard. When the child was being victimized, it is beyond what the child can handle. The school's taking care of it. But again, given the best of circumstances, it's a process. What do you do in the interim? You want to promote indifference. When I've seen kids professionally, I've told them, someone needs friends, take a good book to school and read. You do need friends. That's a bold-faced lie. But again, the more they try, the more they're going to get victimized. So what you try to promote is, and I just recently had a kid who was being victimized who lived close enough to the school that he could run home during recess. It was high school, so he could bike home during recess and lunch period. I said, that's great. Because why should he stay there and be victimized? So he's getting away from it. I thought it was very smart. I encouraged it while we try to address the issues with him and with the school and see if we can remedy the situation. So in the interim period, because the strange thing is, again, the best thing to do if you're being victimized is show indifference. Also, what happens to the victim is they can't be themselves. They're frantic to make friends. They start clowning, acting, making jokes in class, and whatever, trying to ingratiate themselves to the tougher kids, and you want them just to not care that much. So while it's being remedied, the interim you try to promote indifference. Okay, yes?
With regards to what you were saying, with the counterbalance being one of the keys to
Right.
one of the indicators of bullying, what do you do when you have a situation where you have one child who's being meet together, and the child who's being acted on has been told, don't retaliate, which obviously not advocating retaliating, but the kid does retaliate, is visibly upset by whatever that other kid has done to them, and then that kind of doesn't that create an environment where it automatically creates a power imbalance where that kid who was hurting him said, oh well, look, the kid's not going to tell on me or told on me, but nothing really serious happened. I put my time out, and that was it. And I got away with it because I got to do something mean, and he didn't punch me. I'm going to do it again. So how do we try to foster an environment where that doesn't happen, where we don't automatically create this power imbalance this action has hurt the child, that he's not going to.
Okay. Okay. So by the time we're going to get involved as a school, everybody knows who's hurting whom. Okay. There is one technique I've done, by the way, especially when it's like one-on-one kind of bullying. Like, let's say, again, it's a bigger kid, you can't do that with a social bullying, but the one-to-one kind of bullying, one of the things I do is I would corral the assistant principal, which, by the way, is the worst job. I don't know why anybody want to be assistant principal. You have all the dirty, assistant principal's here, right? Okay. You do all the dirty work, right? And you get none of the credit, right? But I guess, thank God there's masochism and we have assistant principals, right? So I would get the assistant principal. I don't have to say answer your question, right? I get assistant principal. This is what I used to do in the school. And I would, let's say there's one boy beating up on another boy. And I have them call both boys into the office and let them both have it. As if it's an even fight. Forget that one kid is, look like Mike Tyson, the other one looks, I don't know, like, but you two and you two fighting, what do you two think, and you two, and if this keeps up on you two are going to be thrown off the team, you're going to have to leave the school, you two, to both of them, and then really be nasty, and then say, now you two figure out how you're going to get along, I'm going to come back, and you better tell me something or you're going home, something like that. Now, I've just done two things. I've taken the victim out of the victim role, because I put him on par with the bully. Because I think it's you two. The other thing I did was, for example, when is the only time Israelis get along? Right? When the Arabs attack, right? When nothing unites somebody than to have a common enemy. Now they both hate the assistant principal more than they hate each other, which is supposed to hate the principal. That's normal. So, those are the kind of things that you can sometimes do, again, for those kind of temporary situations to put a stop to that kind of. But I think you're asking, which I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but you don't want someone in the role of the victim. Is that?
Essentially, I'm just asking, how do you make sure that by having chosen to be the one to be victimized, that this kid doesn't become the perpetual victim? Right.
So that's why we intervene quickly, and that's what I'm saying. That's why we try to take them out of the victim role. You're right that if somebody is regularly victimized, they can become their identity. They can become self-effacing. They can become the kind of person who almost invites abuse. And you're right, and that's something you want to try. That's why you intervene quickly, and that's why you try to, or for that matter, again, when they're very young, sometimes it's a matter of just steering them away from that person. And by the way, if it's severe and it's more than the kid can handle, then we do things, then you pick the kid up, don't let him take the bus home. Or you give him a mental health day. I remember one of my friends once woke up in the morning, he said to his son, yes, what we're going to do today? We're going to play hooky. And his son said, I'd love to, but I don't know how to play. And he said, I'll teach it again, But, it's, sometimes you have to do things like that. But yes, you're right, and by the way, there is the other way too. If someone is invested in being the bully, that becomes their identity. And that can be very hard to shed as well. But again, it's intervening quickly, it's avoiding that situation. And by the way, if you see behaviors that suggest, that kind of self, like inviting them, I'd rather be hated than ignored, inviting them, you put a stop to it. And very friendly, you put a stop to any other destructive behavior, because if that becomes their identity, then being a professional victim doesn't get you far in life. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
My daughter just started high school, and they were told that the bystander doesn't do anything, that the bystander can get in trouble.
I think that's I think there is now.
It's very hard to tell on your friends. Like if you
right.
Something's happening on a group chat or whatever, it's very hard to go to the principal and tell on your friends. So that's
okay. You're right. Not only is it hard, they shouldn't. Because it's not a healthy thing to do. As teenagers, the natural part of teenage life is to make your friends, your peer group, the most important social connection. That's the normal growth.
how can you tell them they're going to
Right. So if they're cheating on a test, if they're they're copying the homework. I don't know if they're hanging out with guys that they're not supposed to. I don't know, whatever. Those kind of normal misbehavior of children, you don't rat on them. Absolutely. But there are certain circumstances that you do. And those are dangerous ones. And bullying is dangerous. It's dangerous, it can be dangerous physically, but psychologically harmful. And the same thing, by the way, goes for if your friend is developing an eating disorder. I don't care, best friend in the world, it's dangerous. And you have to report it. You have to break your promise and report it. If a child says something about suicide, and I have dealt with kids who knew about a child who threatened them because of that connection didn't, with the tragic outcomes, and they don't want to live with that. So part of educating our children is 100% right. I don't want to hear, I don't want to know, but there's certain things that are dangerous, and that code of honor among teens has to be put aside because of the danger. That's all part of our education. Yeah.
Just wondering what your advice is in terms of giving your kids access to that social media, at what age, and if others...
I was afraid somebody would ask that. Yeah. Access to like Facebook.
If kids have it, and you don't want your child to have that kind of pressure, but the other kids do, like where's that balance between allowing them, but also kind of keeping it at the age level?
I love questions where the answer is embedded in your question. It's a very hard question. On the one hand, and this goes for the whole internet business. On the one hand, there's a lot of dangers, and there's a lot of aspects of it that are very destructive. On the other hand, there's many benefits. It's the reality of our world. And if in your community it is the norm, then I think the safer position is to let them have it, but teach them responsible ways of using it. To know the limitation. It's like, it's the old metaphor with the car. When the car was first invented, people said maybe it shouldn't be produced because it's dangerous. But the answer was we're going to produce it, but we're going to teach people how to use it responsibly. And I think that's it's the reality of it's the reality of the world today. And learning, training them to, which is what we do as Orthodox, especially modern Orthodox Jews. We live in the world, but we live in the world with caveats. We're more careful. We use different kind of cautions, and it's not only, by the way, just showing off social interactions and leaving other people out. And by the way, it's so painful. Right? For the kid who was rejected to see those pictures, you don't know. Terrible. I mean, maybe you do know, but. Teaching to use it in a positive way with kindness and consideration, and to pause, not just to, what I tell the kids I work with, you control it, it doesn't control you. If you're controlling it, it's great. If it's running your life, then it's bad. So that before you post a picture, think. Then post it, Think that it's going to be forever on the computer. Think about what you're saying about yourself. Think about how it might come back to haunt you. Think what it might do to somebody else. And when you've thought it, and it seems to you harmless, then post it. That's the world we live in.
Is there an age at which, even if all their friends have it, you think, it's okay for parents to say, you're not ready for it?
You're the parent, so I'm never going to tell a parent to do their child. However, you have to consider the ramifications, how your child's going to feel that everybody else has. First of all, don't believe your child when they tell you everybody else has it. I always call that as a condition called delusions of unanimity. That everybody else's parents lets them syndrome. So call the parent. But I always tell parents, it's very important. Our children spend the whole day plotting against us, right? We don't talk to each other. They're the enemy. So call the other parents, or you'll be surprised how many other parents are not allowing them, etc. But if after you do your survey, one of my lines, so you can tell me if it's true, like that, at least or not, but sometimes my kids will come to me and say, the Anthropes allow their children. So what happens to do with the Anthropes and the Blumenthal? The Anthropes love their children, so, which is why they don't talk to me today. But at any rate, check it out, but if everybody does, and you live in that community, sometimes we have to do, you can't make your kids so different. It's interesting, you know, who really struggle with this is Chabad Shulchan, who live in these white areas, and their kids are so radically different. Maybe that's easier when it's so radical. But you can't always be Mamash Nasibah. But then again, but teach them to be smart. Teach them to do it with seichel. That's what the skills they need in their life. Yeah.
In my family, my kids are wonderful, but they perfected the great Jewish art of kvetching.
Kvetching,
Like most dads, I'm really busy. And we use a little advice on how to distinguish between just a general kvetch and what's communication about bullying.
A general kvetch versus what's communication. It's usually the nigger. You know, oh, that's a kvetch. You know, look, it's sometimes kids get whiny and kvetchy. Sometimes husbands get whiny and kvetchy. Yeah. You know, I think you know it. I think first of all, usually I don't know if this has to do with bullying, but the whining and kvetching, usually the complaint is more important than the issue. They just need the attention, etc., or they need to be put to bed. So usually it's what's more important is the melody or the content. I think that's what would be the difference. Yeah. Okay, I'm being relieved. Okay, thank you.
So first of all, a huge thank you to Dr. Blumenthal. Thank you very much for coming out here. I know it's not a short drive, you go a long commute back home. And you can entertain as many questions after we let everyone go. Oh, it's true. It gets cheaper once you get past the Jersey tax. Also want to very much thank OHEL for helping make this happen. Thank you, RTMA Middle School, the Bruriah Junior High for partnering with us, for all of you for coming out this evening, for Dr. Michelle for coordinating this entire event from our end. Thank you for coming out. It was an awesome turnout. We had over 70 people in the room, so something to feel really good about. And again, hope everyone gets home safely, and go love your children tonight and tomorrow and forever, and help empower them as we will.